My family ignored me, my whole life, and my twin brother slept with my girlfriend on my birthday. They kicked me out and lied to my millionaire grandfather. But 8 years later, the truth came out, and I inherited $2.3 million, while they got nothing. I'm 25 years old, I work as an electrical engineer, and I need to get this story off my chest because what happened these last few months basically confirmed everything I always knew about my family, but in a way I never imagined. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was a kid and it was already clear that I didn't fit into the perfect family dynamic that my parents, Margaret and Robert, wanted to project. I grew up being the youngest of 4 siblings, and I have a twin, Jason. From early on, it was clear we were like night and day. My entire family was obsessed with sports, like football, basketball, swimming, all those things where you have to run and jump and be the center of attention. Jason was the golden child, the football star, and my other siblings, Gregory and Stephanie, also excelled in their respective sports. Gregory is now a corporate lawyer and Stephanie is a nurse, but back then they were all the perfect kids in their shiny sports uniforms. And then there was me, who preferred archery. I know, it sounds like something from movies or whatever, but I loved it. It was quiet, required concentration, precision. You didn't need to be yelling all the time or crashing into other guys. But to my parents it seemed, I don't know, boring, I guess. Weird. It wasn't masculine enough, or I don't know what. The thing is that throughout my entire childhood and adolescence, my parents went to literally one of my 20 archery tournaments. One. And only because it coincided with my grandmother's birthday, and they had to be in that city anyway. Meanwhile, they didn't miss a single one of Jason's games. They went to all of Gregory's practices, to all of Stephanie's swim meets. I got used to it, honestly. I stopped inviting them after a while because it was easier not to have that hope that maybe this time they would come. My coach was more like a father figure than my own father, if I'm being honest. When I was 15, I met Amber. She was pretty, funny, and she seemed genuinely interested in me and what I did. She supported me at my tournaments, came to watch me practice, and for the first time in my life, I felt like someone really saw me, you know? I wasn't just the invisible brother of Jason, the football star. We dated for 3 years, and I thought things were serious. We were making plans for after graduation, talking about going to the same university, all that stuff teenage couples who think they'll be together forever do. And then came my 18th birthday. Well, our birthday, because Jason and I are twins, but as always, the party was basically for him. All his friends from the team, his trophies on display, my dad telling stories about his best plays. I was used to it, so I snuck out early. Amber was supposed to come later because she had to help her mom with something, but she arrived like an hour earlier than planned. I went upstairs to get I don't know what, and when I passed by Jason's room, I heard voices. And they weren't normal conversation voices, you know what I mean? I opened the door, and there they were. My twin brother and my girlfriend of 3 years. In his bed. And the worst part wasn't just seeing them there, the worst part was Jason's face when he saw me. He wasn't embarrassed or sorry. He was annoyed. Like I had interrupted something that was none of my business. Like I was the one who was out of place in my own house on my birthday. Everything exploded after that. I went downstairs furious. Jason followed me trying to say who knows what, and I punched him. Hard. I broke his nose. I think because there was blood everywhere. My parents started yelling at me, saying I was crazy, how dare I ruin the party, that I was violent. Amber was crying, but not because she cared about hurting me, but because she'd been caught. And there, in the middle of all that chaos, Jason let the truth slip. It hadn't been the first time. They'd been seeing each other for months. Months. While she was telling me, she loved me. While we were making plans for our future, she was sleeping with my twin brother. Turns out my parents were more worried about the possible legal consequences of me hitting Jason than about the fact that he'd been sleeping with my girlfriend for half a year. Their solution was to send me to live with my Aunt Alice, who lived like 2 hours away. Alice was someone who was barely talked about in the family. She was also kind of estranged from everyone for reasons that were never fully explained to me. But she took me in without asking questions, and honestly, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I lived with Alice while I finished high school, and then I went to study electrical engineering in Miami. I cut all contact with my family. I blocked their numbers, their social media, everything. I didn't go to Stephanie's wedding. I didn't respond when Gregory wrote to me a couple times. The first few years, nothing. As far as I know, Jason and Amber stayed together and eventually got married. But that information came to me secondhand, not because I asked. The next 8 years were, I don't know, weird but good at the same time. I built my own life. I graduated with honors, got an excellent job as an electrical engineer, met Nicole, my now wife, who is basically an angel because she's had to deal with all this shit with me. We got married 3 years ago, and we had Ruby a year ago. Ruby is perfect. By the way, she has her mom's eyes and my nose, and she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. We live an hour from where Alice lives, and she's basically the only family I recognize. She's the grandmother Ruby knows, and the only one she needs, honestly. And then, like 3 months before Christmas last year, the messages started. First it was Stephanie, then Gregory, then my mom, and even Jason tried to contact me. All with the same speech about how they'd reflected, that they missed having me in their lives, that families should be together, especially during the holidays, that they wanted to meet my wife and daughter. Basically a coordinated bombardment of, please come back, we forgive you for disappearing, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. Nicole, who is much more optimistic and compassionate than me, thought maybe we should give them a chance. She told me people change, that 8 years is a long time, that maybe they'd matured. I wasn't convinced at all, but I agreed to at least respond to the messages and see what they wanted. The conversations were weird, very forced, with everyone trying too hard to sound casual and friendly. My mom kept sending photos of family gatherings like trying to show me what I was missing, and I just thought, I missed that for 8 years and I was perfectly fine. Why do they care now? But the insistence was brutal. They called me, sent me messages every day. Gregory even offered to come visit us. And right in the middle of all this, Nicole lost the baby. She was 3 months pregnant. We hadn't told anyone yet because we wanted to wait. And one day she started bleeding and we had to go to the hospital and they told us she'd lost the baby. It was devastating. Nicole was heartbroken. I was trying to be strong for her, while inside I felt shattered. And on top of that, there was all this drama with my family suddenly wanting to reconnect. In the middle of all this, I called Alice. She's always been straight with me, tells me things as they are, and I asked her what she thought about this whole situation. She was quiet for a moment, which was already weird because Alice always has something to say. And then she told me, I need to tell you something. I should have told you years ago, but I promised not to. Turns out my family hadn't just abandoned me emotionally and then kicked me out of the house, but they'd also lied to my grandfather, Raymond. He's my mom's dad. He's like 79 years old. He's a multimillionaire, made his fortune in real estate and some investments, and he was always kind of distant but decent to me the few times I saw him as a kid. Apparently, when the whole Jason and Amber thing happened, my family told Grandpa Raymond that I was the one who had cheated, that I was the violent aggressor, that I had attacked Jason without provocation, and basically painted a story where I was the villain and they were the poor victims of my erratic and violent behavior. Alice told me she tried to talk to Raymond at the time, but he told her not to get involved, that she always defended the weird one in the family, meaning me, and that it was better to keep me away until I matured. She was furious for years, but couldn't prove anything because it was her word against the whole family's. And Raymond believed them because, well, there were more of them, and Alice already had her own history of conflict with the family. But here's the good part. About 6 months before my family started their reconnection campaign, Raymond had discovered the truth. I don't know exactly how. Alice says, maybe Jason said something while drunk at a family gathering or someone else let the truth slip without meaning to. But Raymond found out that everything they'd told him was a lie. He told everyone it was a disgrace what they'd done, that they'd destroyed his grandson with lies, and that he was going to disinherit them all unless they made things right with me. There it is. That was the reason for all the messages, all the calls, all the "We Miss You" campaign. It wasn't because they genuinely regretted or reflected on how they treated me. It was because my grandfather had threatened to cut off their access to his fortune of several $1 million. When Alice told me this, I started crying. I'm not going to lie. Nicole was with me, and she cried too. Because it confirmed everything. I'd always thought about my family, but part of me hoped I was wrong about. It confirmed that they never really cared about me, that I was just a nuisance, and now they couldn't even fake affection without having a financial incentive behind it. 2 days later, I got a call directly from Raymond. Alice had told him I already knew the truth, and he wanted to talk to me. The conversation was awkward at first. He apologized for believing the lies, said he should have investigated more before assuming things about me, and that he deeply regretted having contributed to making me feel abandoned by the family. I asked him directly if it was true that he'd threatened to disinherit them, and he didn't deny it. He said it was the only thing those people seemed to understand, apparently, and that if they needed blackmail to behave like decent human beings toward their own brother and son, then they didn't deserve his money anyway. He invited me to visit him, just me first to talk, and then if I wanted I could bring Nicole and Ruby. I agreed because, I don't know, I felt curious, I guess, and also because part of me wanted to hear more about what he really thought about this whole situation. The visit was revealing. Raymond lives in a huge house, like a mansion, with a housekeeper and a driver and all that rich people stuff. He received me in his study, which was full of family photos, and I noticed there were several of me as a kid that I didn't know existed. He pointed to one where I was with my bow after winning a regional tournament when I was like 12 years old, and he told me that my grandmother, who died when I was 8, always sent someone to take pictures of me at my competitions because she knew my parents didn't go. We talked for hours. He asked me questions about my life, my career, my marriage. I told him about Ruby and his eyes lit up. He wanted to meet her, meet Nicole, be part of our lives if I'd allow it. And then he started talking badly about Ruby. Well, not about Ruby directly, but he criticized that she didn't have the family surname. He said something like it was important to maintain lineage and tradition, and that it was a shame my daughter didn't carry the surname that had built all this wealth. I got angry. I told him that Ruby had her mother's surname, because that's what we decided together. That Nicole and I agreed our children would have her surname, because I frankly didn't care about perpetuating the name of a family that had treated me like garbage my entire life. That if that seemed wrong to him, then maybe this reconciliation wasn't going to work after all. He was quiet for a moment, and I thought I'd screwed up, that I'd ruined this possible relationship before it started. But then he laughed. He literally laughed and said, I was right, that it was absurd of him to judge that decision, and that Ruby could be named whatever and she'd still be his great-granddaughter and he'd love her the same. He said he'd spent too much time with people who valued appearances and names more than real people, and that I was reminding him how ridiculous all that was. After that, the visits became regular. Raymond met Nicole and fell in love with her immediately. She has that effect on people. And with Ruby, it was love at first sight. He held her so carefully, bought her extravagant gifts, and basically became the grandfather I never had. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a real family beyond Alice. And then Raymond told me he'd changed his will. That my siblings and my parents would receive something, but most of his estate, $2.3 million, would come to me and my children. I almost had a heart attack. I told him he couldn't do that it was going to cause a huge problem, and he just smiled and said that was exactly what he wanted. Is that I deserved to know that at least one person in the family recognized the value I had and wanted to make sure Ruby and any other children we had in the future were well taken care of. Obviously, the family found out. I don't know how. Whether Raymond told them directly, or his lawyer let something slip, but they found out, and that's when the real show started. They called me furious, accusing me of manipulating an old man, of taking advantage of his guilt, of being an opportunist. Jason had the nerve to tell me I didn't deserve that money because I hadn't even been present in Raymond's life for years, as if he had any moral right to talk about deserving anything after everything he did. Gregory and Stephanie were a bit more calculating. They tried the approach of, let's be reasonable, we're family, we should share everything equitably, but basically they wanted me to convince Raymond to change the will back. My mom cried on the phone saying, how could I do this to them? That they raised me and sacrificed so much for me. My dad directly told me I was a disappointment and that I was destroying the family for money. The irony was delicious, honestly. They contacted me originally only because Raymond threatened to cut them from the inheritance, but now I was the villain for accepting what he wanted to give me. Some of them, I think it was mainly Jason and Gregory, decided to sue. Their argument was that I didn't deserve the inheritance because my children didn't carry the family surname, and that showed my lack of commitment to the family and legacy. It was the stupidest argument I'd ever heard, but they still hired lawyers, and the whole legal process started. Raymond was furious when he found out. He hired the best lawyers he could find, and we defended ourselves. The case was pretty quick because they really had no legal basis whatsoever. A will is a will, and Raymond was completely sane and within his right to leave his money to whoever he wanted. The judge basically told them they were wasting the court's time and that it was shameful they were fighting over money that wasn't even theirs yet. He ordered them to pay the legal fees for both parties, which were like $50,000 or something like that. After they lost the lawsuit came the begging, tearful calls, long messages explaining their financial situation, asking me to talk to Raymond to reconsider, basically groveling. Amber, the ex-girlfriend who cheated on me, had the nerve to write me like a 10-paragraph message about how she and Jason were struggling financially and how it would be the right thing for me to help the family in difficult times. I blocked her immediately. Raymond lived another year and a half after all this. He developed a respiratory disease, something related to smoking for decades according to the doctors, and he deteriorated quickly. I spent as much time as I could with him those last months. Nicole and Ruby too. And he was happy. He told me those last years, getting to know his real grandson and his family had been the best of his life, that he deeply regretted having lost so much time believing lies. He died on a Tuesday morning. I was there, holding his hand. Alice was there too. And Nicole, my siblings and parents. He tried to come to the hospital, but Raymond had left specific instructions that only the three of us were allowed to visit him. He passed peacefully, surrounded by the people who genuinely loved him and whom he loved back. He left a letter for me that his lawyer gave me after the funeral. It was long, handwritten in his shaky handwriting, full of apologies and words of pride. It said he regretted not being the grandfather I deserved when I was a child, that he regretted believing the lies so easily, and that he hoped the money he was leaving me could at least give Ruby and her future siblings the opportunities I'd had to fight to get on my own. It ended by saying I'd been a better man than any of his other grandchildren, despite all the circumstances against me, and that he was proud to call me his grandson. I cried like a baby, reading that letter. I still have it stored in a safe place. The reading of the will confirmed everything. $2.3 million for me and my children, plus some minor properties. My parents received $50,000 each, my siblings $10,000 each. It was enough that they couldn't claim he left them nothing, but the message he was sending was obvious. Since then, they haven't stopped contacting me. Messages about medical emergencies that need money, problems with mortgages, credit card debts, college expenses for their kids. There's always a crisis. There's always a reason why they need me, the rich brother now, to help them. Gregory had the nerve to suggest I should pay for his 3 kids' college education because Raymond would have wanted the family to support each other. I've said no to all of them, every time. Without exceptions. The money is invested smartly. Part of it for Ruby's college fund and any other children we have. Another part in long-term investments. And yes, a portion I'm using for donations to organizations that support children in difficult family situations, specifically archery programs for at-risk youth. Raymond would have approved of that, I think. My family, well, my blood family, keeps trying. Last week, Stephanie sent me photos of her daughter, my niece I've never met, with a message about how nice it would be for Ruby to have a relationship with her cousins. I blocked her too. Jason tries to create new accounts every so often to send me messages, always starts with, "I know you don't want to talk to me, but," and I don't even read the rest before blocking him again. Nicole sometimes asks me if I'll ever forgive them, if there'll ever be reconciliation, and honestly, I don't know. Part of me, a very small part, wonders how things would have been if they'd treated me differently from the beginning, if they'd valued what I did even though it was different from what they did. But then I remember they had multiple opportunities to do the right thing. They had 8 years to genuinely reflect on their behavior, and they only contacted me when there was money involved. That tells me everything. We need to know about who they really are. Ruby is a year old now. She's starting to walk and say her first words. She likes it when I read to her before bed, and we have photos of Raymond with her all over the house. Someday I'll tell her about him, about how he was the only one who really saw my value when the rest of my blood family couldn't or wouldn't. I'll tell her about Alice, who saved me when I needed it most. And if she asks about my parents or my siblings, I'll tell her the age-appropriate truth, that sometimes blood family isn't real family, and that it's okay to distance yourself from people who hurt you even if they share your surname or your DNA. Nicole is pregnant again. 4 months now. We're waiting until the 5th month to tell anyone beyond Alice, for obvious reasons after what happened last time. But this time it feels different, more stable, more hopeful. And whether it's a boy or girl, that baby will grow up knowing they're loved unconditionally, that their interests and passions will be valued no matter if they fit some pre-established mold, and that they have a father who would rather lose everything than make them feel invisible or less than others. Raymond's money gives us security, yes, and I'm grateful for that. But what he really gave me was validation. The confirmation that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the problem, and that I deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. That's priceless, honestly. And if my blood family can't understand that, then they can keep waiting for that forgiveness that's never going to come.